everyone, it's Chelsea from Paper Rock TO Studio, and today I'm sharing with you something a little bit different, I guess. The other day, my kid, who has started school and is in AP Chemistry, came home and said, Mom, could you draw me a chemistry mole? We need it for t-shirts for our AP Chemistry club. And so I'm like, okay, I can draw a chemistry mole, right? I have no idea what that is or what it's supposed to look like. But I decided to give it a try. So I went on the internet, I looked at some pictures of moles. Not the kind on your skin, but the little animal that digs in the dirt with the big claws and the little teeny tiny eyes. And he explained to me what he wanted. He wanted it to have a lab coat. He wanted it to be holding some sort of chemistry thing like a test tube or a beaker. He wanted it to be wearing goggles, things like that. So this is the video of what I made. These days, I'm trying to put out so much content on my channel that if I do anything at all with art, anything, it doesn't matter what it is, I film it just in case. I'm not sure that many people will be interested in watching this, but if you are interested in drawing, illustration, or watercolor, you might like it. So I'm going ahead and making this video. To start out with, I used my drafting pencil with the soft graphite to draw this picture, this illustration. It's obviously a cartoon-like image, not realistic in any way, but I did try to make it recognizable as a mole. I used the long claws, I used the pointy nose, the bald head, but then I dressed it up in its little outfit, and I think it's recognizable. I'm not sure because I'm not really I mean, I looked at pictures of moles. I don't know if this looks like it, but anyway, this is what I did. Then I started to use my illustration pens that I keep separate just for this. They are Faber-Castell Artist Pitt pens, and there's a lot of different tips. One thing that I've learned about making a dynamic illustration, something that's visually interesting, is that you need to vary the line weights. And so I use different tips of these pens, which are permanent. Once they're dry, they're permanent. They're made out of India ink, so once I watercolor or put anything over the top of it, whether it's mixed media or whatever, it's not going to run or smear or anything like that, which is good. But I learned about using thicker lines, thinner lines, really thin lines. So I'm switching up my pens. I started out with the largest bullet tip, and then I decided I wanted the lines even thicker. So I switched to the brush tip, and I did the exterior lines and the lines around the coat and things like that with that. Then I switched to the medium tip for doing some of the more interior lines, like the whiskers, the goggles on the inside, the little things in the pocket protector, things like that, the claws, and then even the extra small tip to do even more fine details. Little hash marks, little lines where I'm trying to show either shading or details like hair, like little bits of hair, things like that. Then I switched back to the brush tip again, and now I'm thickening up areas even thicker. And that's how you make an interesting looking illustration. It's not something that you notice when you look at an illustration. It's not like you look at that and say, oh, look at the varied line weights. Wow, that's interesting. No, it just gives your eye a place to look, a place to move around the drawing. I hope I'm making sense. But anyway, that's the reason that I do it. So that's why I need a lot of different illustration pens. I don't need just one. And this little pocket of them is really useful. I'll put a link below so that you can find it if you're interested in illustration. I did have the Micron pens, which are a pigment pen. And even here in Arizona, I didn't have luck with them drying as quickly. I'm an impatient person. I want them to dry. So I like these better. So I'm just going and fussing and putting in more lines, thick lines, thin lines, detail lines. Then once I'm done, I decide I've already scanned this. They're gonna make white on purple T-shirts, and I'm sure there'll be some letters or something. And they won't necessarily pick my illustration. I think some of the other kids are drawing something. Um, I don't know. They may not use it at all. But I scanned it into my computer, and then I also inverted it and put it on a purple field so that you could see what it looks like, white on purple. Um, I don't know why they picked those colors. I don't know why. Anyway, I just did what I was asked. So I decided I wanted to color it. It's on 140-pound cold pressed watercolor paper on the smooth side. So I figured I would color it with watercolor. But the first thing I did is I wanted to make a tile floor. So I used um, squares and rectangles type stencil and some black acrylic paint and made black and white tile on the floor. To me, I think chemistry labs are tiled. I think that's something that you can keep really clean, and you can, bleach it, and I mean, I don't know if that's true. That's probably like some type of a stereotype from old movies of scary monster labs or something. I don't know. I didn't even take chemistry in high school, so I don't know. But anyway, I wanted it to look like it was tile. So that's why I did that. Then I kind of also have this idea that walls in places like hospitals and labs and things like that are mint green or a light turquoise. That's another stereotype. Green's supposed to be a soothing color. So I think that's the reason that I don't know why I think that. But anyway, I picked this kind of a medium turquoise color because I've been liking turquoise lately, and decided to do that for the wall behind him. And I am using my Neocolor II water soluble crayons, which is basically a watercolor product, and a very high quality, very thirsty watercolor brush that has a very fine tip to it. And I can do detail work all the way up to washes with this brush. It's new. I got it at Dick Blick, and it was about $25 for that brush. But anyway, so I'm using my Neocolor II crayons, and I'm either coloring the crayon directly onto the paper and then blending it with the brush with lots of water in it, or else in some cases you'll see me take the tip of the brush and rub it on the tip of the crayon to get color off and use it that way. So I've decided that moles are brown and that they have a little pink nose and kind of a lighter area around their cheeks. So I'm going to go with that, and then I'm going to do a darker brown around the rest of it. I used a gray crayon. I have shades of gray, but not 50 of them. And the one that I use, the lightest one that I've used so far for the shading on the coat, lab coats are white. They're generally white, although I have seen blue ones before. But white isn't white. White is gray with white highlights. So I use that light gray, although it's hard to see in the video. I see that you can't see it very well, but I'll end up darkening it up in some places to make shadows and highlights on the coat so that it looks more dynamic. But right now I'm still working on his little fur, and I started out with a kind of a light reddish brown. You see I have lots of different colors of brown. Lots and lots of them. And then I'm doing kind of like a wet on wet where all that area of that brown is wet, and then I'm using my brush on the tip of the watercolor crayon and adding in more dark in the areas that I want it to be darker, where the shadow would be, like around his collar, underneath the goggles, underneath his lower lip, things like that. And I will continue to do that until I'm satisfied with it. I used a charcoal gray on his undershirt. my kid wears black all the time. Like that's it. He will absolutely not wear any other color. Just black. And he has a lot of black concert t-shirts. Um, so he wears those. He wears black jeans. He wears black shoes. He wears black socks. He wears black underwear. All black all the time. So that's the reason that I made the t-shirt look like a dark black, or, well, it's dark gray, but it gives you the intention of black t-shirt underneath the white lab coat. So I'm just continuing to add color. My test tube has some very limey chartreusey green liquid in it that is giving off smoke. I don't know what it is, but it looks dangerous. With the test tube, I can't leave it white because when you look at glass, when you shine light through glass, it's either like green or blue most times, or the highlights and shadows are green or blue, or sometimes like a gray. So I'm adding blue to that around the edges, but then leaving the center white to try to make it look transparent. He also has another little test tube in his pocket, along with his pen and maybe a little flashlight or something, because you have to have things in your pocket when you're wearing a lab coat. I mean, that's just the way it is. So I'm also like making the brown areas wet and then dabbing a dark color into it, like tap, 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 to try to give the impression of fur, because fur isn't just flat. It has highlights all over it where it's usually shiny, and then it has like all these different bumpy pieces, and the light hits it and you get tons and tons of little highlights all over. So that's what I'm trying to do. Making the claws darker. I think they're black. I think the claws are probably black. I used Van Dyke brown, which is a really, really dark brown, on them, just based on the few little pictures that I looked at on the internet. Adding some pink back into his face. Their little noses are very, very pink. Pink noses, so need to be sure to add that. Then just finishing up with adding in a few little colors here and there in his pocket. I decided to make the goggles blue. I don't really know what color goggles are, like the ones you would wear in a chemistry lab. I don't know, but I figured they probably have varied colors, so I just decided to make them blue because I thought that looked nice. I don't know why. Also, inside the goggle, where the protective plastic would be, I still have that brown in there, because you'd be able to see through it and you'd be able to see the fur underneath being brown, but it would be lighter because of the reflection of the glass or plastic or whatever it is over that area. It would give the appearance that was lighter underneath there. So that's the reason that I left it lighter. All these things that I do make sense. It's just hard to explain. I like to pretend I know what I'm doing. Another thing that I'm doing in some places that you probably might have seen me do but don't really know what I was doing. With watercolor, it's forgiving in that you can put, if you like smear it out of line somehow or get it where you don't want it, you can take that wet brush, clean, almost a little bit wet but not quite, and you can lift up the color to get rid of any mistakes. So the blue from the goggles was bleeding into the wet area of the eye, and so I had to lift out a little bit of color. So now I've got out my Japanese markers. These are interesting. They are a marker, but they have a brush tip, like an actual brush tip. Sometimes markers say brush tip, but this is like, it's like the water barrel brushes that I use, that kind of synthetic bristle brush. That's what's on the end of these. And then they're filled up with color. So they're kind of cool. and they're in Japanese writing, so I really don't know what they say. But I know that they're water soluble, and so I use them as another watercolor option. And I'm just taking different ones. I took the turquoise and tried to make a little bit of a tile looking idea on the back wall to give it more visual interest and also to make it look like it's a tiled wall, but not actually sit there and draw in tiles or, you know, stencil in tiles or anything like that. It just gives you that idea without actually doing much work. And then I'm darkening the shadows with the brown marker and then blending that in with my brush. Works pretty good. Gets the color exactly where I want it. To make him even a little bit darker brown with lots of shadows and highlights. I added darker blue, I added some green to the smoke, just increasing the color, saturation, and visual interest. I also take that brown marker and go over all the little marks that I've made to give the impression of hair, and then I blend those a little bit, just a little bit with the brush. And I blend everything a little bit with the brush, but not completely blend it out. So these little brush markers give me more control than the crayons that I was using. I can't, because my crayons are all pretty dull because I use them a lot, I can't put them in little teeny tiny spaces like that. So it's another good option for adding more detail. Then of course the white Posca. Got to get out the white Posca. Some of my red bled over his teeth, so I had to do whiten up his teeth. I need to add all my little white lines and highlights that I like to do. You know I do this all the time. You guys have seen me do it. It just adds another dimension to have those very bright white highlights. And this is my fine tip white Posca pen. So if you guys have enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment so I know that you're here. If you haven't already, subscribe so then you'll know when my videos come out and you won't have to look for them. And of course, if you really liked it and you think chemistry moles are funny, share it. Because I think it's funny. It's cute. I don't know. I also added a highlight to all these tiles to make them look more dimensional like tiles. So anyway, thanks for watching. That's it for me. Bye-bye.